They don't panic when you're crying, texting, begging for clarity, or trying to fix the connection. In fact, that version of you often makes them feel safe because it confirms one quiet belief they've carried for a long time. You're still there, you're still reachable, you're still emotionally available. Even if they act cold, even if they disappear, even if they give you crumbs, your chasing tells their nervous system the same thing every time. I can pull away and not truly lose you. And that's why the avoidance, final dirty trick, rarely appears when you're still emotionally hooked. It appears when you finally detach. Because detachment is not silence. Detachment is energy. It's the moment your tone changes, your attention shifts, your replies get neutral, your eyes stop begging, your heart stops negotiating. It's the moment you stop reacting to their mixed signals, like they're puzzles you need to solve. It's the moment you stop needing their validation to feel real. And when an avoidant senses that shift, something inside them tightens, not because they suddenly became deeply evolved, but because they feel a loss of control. Avoidants often survive by controlling distance. They control how close the relationship gets, how deep conversations go, when affection is given, when it's removed, when they respond, when they disappear. That control is their safety. It keeps them from feeling exposed, pressured, or emotionally responsible. But your detachment breaks their system, because it removes their biggest comfort, the option of you. You become something they can no longer manage with timing, silence, or half effort. Your absence turns from a temporary phase into a real possibility, and that possibility feels like threat. So the first keynote is this: they don't return when you want them. They return when they feel you no longer want them. Not because they're evil, but because the emotional stakes finally become high enough to override their usual avoidance. It's not love waking up first, it's panic. It's the sudden realization that the door they've been casually leaning on might actually close. And when that happens, they often come back with a version of themselves you've been waiting to see, the attentive version, the soft version, the I miss you version, the reflective version. They become warm when you've gone cold. They become interested when you've stopped investing. They become consistent when you've stopped expecting it. That's the trick. They offer you just enough to make you doubt your detachment. They don't always come back with a clear apology or full accountability. They come back with emotional bait, something that reactivates your nervous system. A memory, a compliment, a late night message that hits your heart at the weakest hour. I've been thinking about us. I realized what I lost. These words can be true in the moment, but the purpose often isn't repair. The purpose is reconnection, because reconnection calms their panic. If they can get you to respond with warmth, they regain their footing. They feel powerful again. They feel like they still matter. They feel like they can still reach you. And here's what makes it dirty. They often mirror the exact version of you they couldn't tolerate before. If you used to ask for emotional closeness, they avoided it. Now they suddenly offer it. If you used to ask for effort, they resisted it. Now they suddenly show it. If you used to ask for clarity, they withheld it. Now they suddenly speak in big emotional statements. But watch the timing. It's rarely offered when you're still available. It's offered when you're leaving. Because it's not always about choosing you. Sometimes it's about stopping you from choosing yourself. When you finally detach, you stop feeding their comfort. You stop giving them the emotional supply that let them stay half in. And without that supply, they feel an unfamiliar discomfort. Not the discomfort of intimacy, but the discomfort of being irrelevant. Of being replaceable. Of being too late. That discomfort makes them reach, because reaching is the fastest way to restore their sense of control. So if you want to understand this keynote deeply, stop judging the words and start watching the pattern. Do they show up only when you pull away? Do they get warm only when you go quiet? Do they suddenly care? Only when they feel you slipping? Do they disappear the moment you ask for accountability, consistency, or a real plan? Because a person who is truly ready for repair doesn't need your absence to behave correctly. They don't need the threat of losing you to start valuing you. They don't need panic to access tenderness. They access tenderness because they've grown enough to hold it without fear. The second keynote is this: the avoidance, final dirty trick, is not always cruelty, it's emotional confusion. When they know you've stopped caring, they often don't come back with clean accountability. They come back with mixed signals designed to pull you out of your peace and back into the cycle. Because confusion is the one place where you're easiest to control. A clear person is hard to manipulate. A regulated person is hard to hook. But a person who is unsure, hopeful, triggered, and emotionally activated will start doing what they used to do: overthinking, explaining, defending, chasing, checking, waiting. And that is exactly what the avoidant wants when they panic. Not necessarily you in love, but you in motion. So they initiate contact in a way that keeps them safe while making you unstable. They don't say, "I was wrong, and I want to repair." They say, "I've been thinking about you," and disappear again. They don't say, "I understand how I hurt you." They say, "I miss you," but refuse to talk about the past. They don't say, "I'm ready to be consistent." They say, "I don't want to lose you," and then give you nothing you can build trust on. The goal of these messages isn't closure, it's activation. They want to poke your nervous system and see if you still respond. They want proof they still matter. They want to restore the emotional thread without paying the emotional bill. This is why the most common tactic is the breadcrumb. A breadcrumb is small on purpose. It's safe for them. It has plausible deniability. If you respond enthusiastically, they feel powerful. If you respond cautiously, they can act like you're cold. If you don't respond, they can retreat into victimhood and say, "I tried." Breadcrumbs create a game where you do all the emotional work, reading between lines, guessing intent, filling gaps. And while you're filling gaps, they're staying protected. They get to keep control of distance while keeping access to your attention. Then comes the nostalgia hook. They bring up a memory that bypasses your logic and hits your heart. An inside joke. A song. A photo. A place you used to go. A phrase only you two used. Nostalgia is powerful because it makes you romanticize the past. It makes you forget the anxiety of inconsistency and only remember the warmth of connection. That warmth is real, but it's incomplete. The avoidant uses nostalgia because it doesn't require accountability. It doesn't require them to say, "I hurt you." It just requires you to remember the good, so you open the door again. Another part of the confusion tactic is sudden sweetness. They become the person you begged for, but only briefly. They respond fast. They compliment you. They act soft. They seem emotionally available. This can feel like a miracle, and that's why it works. It creates the thought, maybe they finally changed. But when sweetness appears only after you detach, it often functions like a reset. It's designed to restart your hope, because hope is what keeps you available. And the moment you become available again, their fear of intimacy returns, and they pull back, because now the threat is closeness, and closeness triggers them. Confusion can also come through guilt bait. They suddenly sound sad, lost, depressed, overwhelmed. They hint that life is hard. They imply they're struggling. They may not directly ask for you, but they create an emotional atmosphere that makes you feel responsible to comfort them. If you're an empath, you'll want to rescue. But rescuing them from discomfort teaches them a dangerous lesson. I can hurt you, withdraw, then come back and be soothed by you. That turns your kindness into their safety net. The key point is this: confusion is a form of control. It keeps you emotionally engaged while they remain emotionally uncommitted. It keeps the connection alive without requiring consistency. It keeps you in a loop of analyzing their intentions instead of analyzing their actions. So the antidote to this keynote is clarity. You don't match confusion with emotion. You match confusion with structure. You don't chase the breadcrumb into a deeper conversation. You respond with a standard. You can say, if you want to talk, speak directly. You can say, I'm not available for vague contact. You can say, if you want repair, accountability and consistency are required. These responses do something powerful. They remove the playground. They remove the game. They force truth. And when truth is required, the avoidant has to choose, step into maturity, or retreat. That choice gives you the one thing confusion tries to steal, your peace. The third keynote is the manufactured crisis, the moment they sense you've truly stopped caring, and instead of offering real accountability, they create urgency to pull you back into emotional proximity. Because urgency bypasses your standards. Urgency makes you forget patterns. Urgency makes you act from empathy, fear, and reflex instead of self-respect and clarity. And avoidance, especially the ones who have relied on you as their emotional regulator, know exactly how powerful your empathy is. They know that if they can make you feel responsible for their well-being, you will show up even if you promised yourself you wouldn't. So suddenly something is wrong. They're struggling, they're overwhelmed, they're lonely, they're sick, they lost something. Their life feels empty. They sound softer than usual. They might even say, I don't have anyone else. Or they hint at pain in a vague way, just enough to alarm you without giving you clear facts. They may message late at night when you're more emotional. They may use dramatic language that makes you feel like ignoring them would be cruel. And if you're a caring person, it works because it hits your heart, not your mind. But here's the core truth. Needing you in a crisis is not the same as respecting you in a relationship. A crisis can be real, but the manufactured part is the emotional function it serves. The crisis becomes a tool to reopen access without accountability. It creates a situation where you feel you can't ask hard questions, can't demand clarity, can't bring up the past, because now you're being mean. It puts you back into a familiar role, the healer, the rescuer, the one who calms the storm. And the avoidant gets what they want, emotional closeness without emotional responsibility. They receive comfort, attention, presence, and reassurance, while you silence your own needs, because you don't want to seem heartless. This is why this keynote is so important, because it exposes the most dangerous trap for empaths, confusing compassion with self-abandonment. Many people think being a good person means always responding, always helping, always being available. But availability is not love when it destroys your nervous system. You can be compassionate and still have boundaries. You can care about someone's pain and still refuse to re-enter a pattern that broke you. Because if a person only reaches out when they're drowning, but ignores you when you're bleeding, that isn't love. That's a one-way emotional pipeline. And here's what usually happens if you fall for the crisis hook. You respond, you comfort, you reassure, you offer emotional presence. The avoidant calms down. Their panic reduces. Their fear of loss fades. And once they feel stable again, their fear of intimacy returns, because now closeness is back on the table. So they start pulling away again. The crisis ends, and so does their effort. They go quiet. They become vague. They delay. And you're left confused, because you were just there for them in their hardest moment, so why are they distant again? But this is exactly how the cycle restarts. They return for relief, not for repair, and you become the temporary medicine they take when withdrawal hits. The manufactured crisis can also take a subtler form. They might not say anything dramatic. They might simply appear broken, and that brokenness is enough to pull your empathy. They may say, I've been having a hard time, and let your imagination fill the worst possibilities. They may imply they're depressed, lost, or empty without you. Again, not always fake, but the timing matters. It often happens when you've stopped feeding the connection. It often appears when you're finally stable and distant. It often arrives when they feel irrelevant. So how do you handle it without becoming cold? You separate humanity from access. You can acknowledge their feelings without reopening your life. You can respond with calm boundaries. You can say, "I'm sorry you're struggling. I hope you get the support you need." If it's appropriate, you can suggest professional help. If you genuinely believe there's immediate danger, you can encourage them to reach out to emergency services or a trusted person nearby. But you don't become their emotional home again. Not unless there's real accountability, consistent behavior, and a clear commitment to change. Because the goal is not to punish them. The goal is to protect the healed version of you. The healed version of you understands that love is not proven by how fast you rescue someone. Love is proven by mutual care, mutual responsibility, and mutual respect. And if their crisis only appears when you detach, it's often not a sign they've changed. It's a sign they've noticed they're losing control. The fourth keynote is the jealousy poke. The subtle move they use when softness doesn't work and urgency doesn't work. So they try insecurity. When an avoidant senses you've stopped caring, your calm can feel like rejection to them. Even if you're not doing anything wrong. Your calm tells them they're no longer the center of your emotional world. And that threatens the one comfort they relied on, knowing they still had access. So instead of coming forward with honest accountability, they try to trigger you back into attachment by making you feel replaceable. This is the part that feels dirty, because it plays with your nervous system. They don't always say, "I'm seeing someone." They rarely make it that direct. They do it with hints, vibes, and strategic visibility. A new post that looks a little too curated. A story that shows a dinner table, but never shows who is across from them. A sudden increase in social activity after months of quiet. A comment from someone attractive on their page that they leave up. A caption about, "moving on," "new energy," "new chapter." Or they might mention someone casually in conversation. "I was out with friends," but they slip in a detail meant to sting, just enough to make you wonder. Why do they do this? Because jealousy activates attachment faster than love does. When you are detached, your nervous system is calm. You're thinking clearly. You're finally choosing yourself. That calm is dangerous for someone who used to regulate closeness through your pursuit. So they try to disturb your calm. They want you to feel a sudden drop in your stomach, that sharp moment of, "Wait, are they replacing me?" Because if they can awaken that feeling, they can awaken the old version of you, the version that reacts, the version that checks, the version that wants to secure the bond, the version that reaches out to reclaim certainty. And when you reach out, they win, not because they rebuilt love, but because they restored control. Sometimes it's conscious, sometimes it isn't. But the pattern is the same. The jealousy poke is a test. It asks one question: do I still have power over you? And if you respond with emotion, they get the answer they wanted. Even negative emotion can be satisfying, because it proves you still care. It proves you're still affected. It proves you're still emotionally connected. This is why an avoidant can seem indifferent during the relationship, but suddenly provocative when you detach. They are not chasing intimacy. They are chasing relevance. They want to feel like they still matter, and jealousy is a shortcut to feeling important. The jealousy poke also serves another purpose. It gives them a reason to avoid accountability. If you react, if you confront, if you ask questions, they can shift the focus onto your jealousy and call you controlling, insecure, overreacting. Now the story becomes about your reaction again, not about their inconsistency, their silence, their withdrawal, their lack of repair. It's a clever escape route. They provoke you, then blame you for being provoked, and suddenly they're back in the driver's seat. This is why the most powerful response to the jealousy poke is non-reactivity paired with standards. Not pretending you don't feel it, but refusing to let it control you. You don't interrogate them. You don't compete. You don't rush to prove your worth. You don't post to get their attention. Because the moment you compete, you've entered their game. And their game is designed to keep intimacy out and control in. Instead, you return to your structure. You remind yourself, if someone wanted to repair with me, they would come with accountability, not with mind games. If someone respected me, they wouldn't try to trigger insecurity to regain access. If someone was ready for real love, they would communicate clearly, not poke my nervous system and watch me bleed. When you stay calm, the jealousy poke loses power. It can't hook you if you don't bite. And that's when the avoidant faces the truth they've been trying to avoid. They can't get you back through emotion alone. They would have to get you back through maturity, through consistency, through ownership, through real change. And if they can't do that, then your calm isn't just self-control, it's self-respect. It's you refusing to be pulled back into a cycle where your heart is the price of their comfort. The fifth keynote is the history rewrite, the most poisonous, final trick. Because it doesn't just try to pull you back, it tries to make you doubt yourself. When they know you've stopped caring, and the usual hooks aren't working, some avoidants attempt to blur the truth, so you lose the confidence to keep your boundary. They don't need to win you back with love. They just need to destabilize you enough that you re-engage. Because a person who is certain about what happened is hard to pull back. But a person who is confused, guilty, and second guessing can be dragged into endless conversations, explanations, and emotional labor. And that emotional labor is exactly what keeps you tied to them. History rewrite sounds like, both did things. It sounds like, you're acting like I'm the villain. It sounds like, it wasn't that bad. It sounds like, you're remembering it wrong. It sounds like, you're too sensitive. It sounds like, I tried. You didn't. They take your clear experience and turn it into a debate. And once it becomes a debate, you stop protecting yourself and start defending yourself. You start gathering examples. You start proving points. You start explaining your feelings like they're on trial. You start trying to convince them to understand. And that's the trap, because now you're emotionally involved again, not because they repaired, but because they provoked. This is the difference between a mature conversation and a manipulative one. A mature conversation seeks understanding. A manipulative one seeks control. In history rewrite, they are not trying to learn your experience, they are trying to dilute it. Because if they can dilute it, they can escape accountability. And if they can escape accountability, they can keep the door open without changing. Why does this happen when you stop caring? Because your detachment threatens their ego. Your detachment is a verdict. It silently says, I saw the pattern, and I'm done. That is intolerable for someone who needs to believe they were justified. So they attempt to restore their self-image by reframing the story. If they can make you the unreasonable one, they don't have to feel the weight of being the one who withheld effort. If they can make it mutual, they don't have to apologize. If they can make you doubt your memory, they can make you doubt your boundaries. And here is what makes it especially dangerous for empathetic people. You are willing to self-reflect. You're willing to admit mistakes. You're willing to see both sides. That's a strength in healthy relationships, but in unhealthy dynamics it becomes a lever. They count on your conscience. They count on your kindness. They count on the fact that you don't want to be unfair. So they push you into defending yourself, because once you're defending, you're no longer detached. This rewrite can also come with sudden moral superiority. They speak like the calm, rational one. They accuse you of drama. They act like your emotional pain is a flaw. They use logic to invalidate emotion, because logic gives them distance, and distance gives them control. But logic without empathy is not maturity. It's avoidance dressed up as intelligence. So how do you beat history rewrite? You refuse to litigate your reality. You don't argue your experience with someone who benefits from misunderstanding you. You don't beg to be believed. You don't enter courtroom mode. Instead, you state your truth once and return to your boundary. You can say, I'm not debating what I lived. You can say, we remember it differently, and my boundary remains the same. You can say, if you want repair, it requires accountability, not rewriting. These lines are powerful because they remove the fuel. They don't give them the emotional fight they want. They don't give them the chance to keep you trapped in explanation. And this keynote is crucial, because the final dirty trick isn't always them trying to get you back romantically. Sometimes it's them trying to regain emotional dominance, to leave with the upper hand, to make sure you don't walk away feeling clear. They want you to leave questioning yourself, because a person who questions themselves is easier to revisit later. But your healing is built on certainty, not certainty that you were perfect, but certainty that you deserve better than inconsistency. Certainty that your needs were valid. Certainty that love should not require you to shrink. Certainty that if someone truly valued you, they would not need to distort the past to justify losing you. When you stop debating and start standing firm, history rewrite fails. They can't control someone who refuses to be confused. And the moment you refuse confusion is the moment you fully reclaim the one thing they were trying to steal, your peace.